After years of enduring our HOA's oppressive control, they finally pushed me too far by jacking up my fees over the number of cars in my own driveway. What they didn't realize was that I'd been quietly snapping up properties in the neighborhood for years. Now, it was time to show Linda, our domineering HOA president, who really held the reins in this community. But would she step down quietly when I unveiled my trump card? I never sought out conflict with the HOA, not at all. But when I found that glaring yellow notice slapped on my front door last Tuesday morning, I knew it was game on. My hands trembled as I read it. Immediate HOA fee increase, $500 monthly. Violation, excessive vehicles on property. 3 cars, that's what this was about. My pickup truck, essential for my plumbing business. My wife Emily's sedan for her nursing shifts. And the beat-up Toyota we'd gotten for our son's 17th birthday last month. 3 perfectly reasonable cars parked in our own driveway. From my kitchen window, I watched Linda Simmons, our HOA president, strut through her morning patrol, clutching her lime green clipboard and tape measure. She paused at my driveway, whipped out her phone, and started snapping photos again. 4th time this week. Honey, she's out there. Emily called from the living room. Maybe we should just stick the Toyota in the garage? No, I replied, pouring my coffee with a steady hand. We're not hiding our son's car like we're criminals. The garage is packed with your medical gear and my tools. Exactly what we tried to explain at the last HOA meeting. I could still see Linda's smug grin as she'd brush me off. Rules are rules, Mr. Carter, she'd said, barely glancing up from her phone. If you can't afford proper storage, maybe this neighborhood isn't for you. What Linda didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been discreetly buying up homes in our subdivision for the past 5 years through my real estate side gig. It started as a savvy investment move, but now it was my ace in the hole. I strolled out to grab the mail, taking my time. Linda pretended to fuss over Mrs. Davis's tulips while sneaking glances my way. Poor Mrs. Davis had been hit with a fine last month for tulips deemed too bold and clashing with the neighborhood's aesthetic cohesion. My phone pinged, a text from my attorney. Final closing done. You now own 67% of the development. I grinned, pocketing the phone as Linda marched over, clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Mr. Carter, she chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. I trust you got our notice about your vehicle violation? I did, Linda, I said evenly. And I've got some questions about the legal grounds for this fee hike. She waved me off. The board has full authority to impose fees as we see fit. Maybe if you showed up to meetings, you'd get how this works. Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. She had no clue I'd been at every meeting for 5 years, represented by proxies tied to the homes I'd bought under various LLCs. I'd cataloged every one of her petty power plays, every dubious fine, every instance of favoritism. As she turned to leave, her sneakers squeaking on the pavement, she tossed over her shoulder. Oh, and we're holding an emergency meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Sharp. We'll be addressing problem properties. I watched her go, then texted my lawyer. Time to prep those files. Linda's making her move tonight. My son's Toyota rolled into the driveway just then, and I saw Linda pause to snap more pics. My temper flared, but I held it together. Tonight would flip the script. I had calls to make. Inside, I spread out my property charts on the desk, each lot marked and color-coded. 5 years of meticulous planning, of watching Linda's HOA tyranny escalate. Tonight, she'd learn her biggest mistake wasn't targeting my family. It was underestimating me. My phone rang. It was Mrs. Davis, sobbing about yet another violation notice. As I listened, I glanced at a framed photo of my dad, standing proud in front of his first home before an HOA drove him out with harassment decades ago. He'd taught me to play smart, not mad. I checked my watch. 6 hours till the meeting. Linda wanted to flex over a few cars. She was in for a shock. I stepped into the community center that night, and the air crackled with tension. Every chair was taken. Neighbors I'd known for years, packed in tight, murmuring. Linda had gone all out, even hiring a photographer to snap my driveway from every angle, making 3 normal cars look like a junkyard. Let's get started, she declared, rapping her glittery blue gavel on the podium. She'd scheduled this emergency meeting on a Tuesday night, banking on working folks being too busy to show. But I was there, parked in the back, watching her perform. As you can see, she began, clicking through her slideshow. Mr. Carter's property is basically a parking garage. A few gasps rippled from her cronies up front, the same ones whose holiday lights lingered past Easter without a peep from her. I scanned the room. Mrs. Lopez, my elderly neighbor, rolled her eyes. She'd been fined last month for her daughter's car in her driveway while fixing her fence. Mr. Patel, the math teacher, scribbled notes. He'd gotten a violation for his car edging past his driveway line during a snowstorm. Linda flipped to a close-up of my son's Toyota. This vehicle's been stationary for over 48 hours, she said, conveniently omitting that he'd been home from college for the weekend. Her presentation dragged on. Charts of alleged property value drops, anonymous complaints, likely her pals, and weather data claiming my cars caused street snow drifts. Plus, she added, hauling out a binder, I've tracked every vehicle movement at Mr. Carter's place for 3 months. My jaw tightened. She'd been stalking us. Neighbors squirmed in their seats. Then Sarah Miller, my next-door neighbor, stood up. Linda, isn't this overkill? They're just normal cars. Linda's face twisted. You're out of order. The chair hasn't recognized you. I watched her husband, Greg, pass out copies of a new bylaw. 2 cars max per household, garage parking only. Ridiculous. We'll vote on the restrictions and fee increase now, Linda announced, skipping discussion. All in favor. That's when I rose, adjusting my jacket. Point of order, Madam President. Her eyes narrowed. You're not recognized, Mr. Carter. Actually, I said, pulling out my papers. Per HOA bylaws, Section 7.3, any property owner can raise a point of order on voting procedures. The room hushed. Linda's knuckles whitened on the podium. Before we vote, I continued, strolling to the front, we should review the HOA's ownership breakdown. I unfurled a property map. For 5 years, Horizon Holdings has been buying homes here. As its CEO, I thought you'd like to know who owns the majority of this HOA. Linda paled as I met each board member's gaze. But maybe we should first address your questionable surveillance habits. Whispers erupted. Phones emerged, recording. Linda fumbled her water bottle, toppling her gavel. Greg rushed to her, muttering in her ear. Her eyes widened. She was starting to get it. The silence was thick as I stood again, pulse racing but voice steady. Linda's smirk faltered as I opened my briefcase and laid out property deeds, one by one. Each sheet was a piece of my 5-year puzzle clicking into place. The room buzzed as I lined them up. For years, I said, I've watched this board neglect real issues while nitpicking good people. I've seen Linda hound Mrs. Davis, who's 82, over a flower pot an inch too high, while her buddy Lisa's neon yellow shed never gets a warning. Linda's face flushed. That's a lie. I enforce rules evenly, she snapped, spilling water on her silk shirt. I pulled up photos on the screen. Here's Linda measuring my lawn at 3 a.m. Last Tuesday, security footage doesn't lie. Gasps echoed. And here she is ignoring the Wilsons' violations right after they hired her nephew's painting crew. Nods rippled through the crowd. Folks recalling their own brushes with her bias. But here's the kicker, I said, lifting the deeds. Through Horizon Holdings, I now own 67% of this development. That makes me the HOA's majority owner. Linda shot up, chair crashing. You can't do that. It's illegal. Her voice hit a shrill pitch. I've had 3 law firms confirm it's legit, I replied coolly, producing another folder. I also have 32 signed complaints about harassment, selective enforcement, and shady fees. The room exploded. Mrs. Davis rose, voice quavering. Last winter, they fined me $200 for not shoveling while I was hospitalized with a broken hip. Others chimed in with their tales. Linda banged her gavel, but no one cared. I moved to dissolve the current board, I said. We'll hold new elections with term limits and transparency rules. No more midnight lawn checks. No more favoritism. Mr. Patel seconded it. Hands shot up everywhere. Linda grabbed her purse and bolted for the door. Meeting adjourned. You'll hear from my lawyer. Actually, I called. Per Section 7.3, you need a majority to adjourn. You don't have it. I nodded at the deeds. We're just warming up. She froze, hand on the knob, her 2-decade reign crumbling. Now, about those $50,000 pool fees from last summer. The pool's still broken. I've got bank records to discuss. Linda slumped, pale. Outside, a news van rolled in. I tipped them off about our community overhaul. Hours of unraveling Linda's secrets lay ahead, and I had every receipt. My patience was paying off, and the best was yet to come. Monday morning, my lawyer's office was flooded with 20 furious voicemails from Linda. She'd dug up my property records over the weekend and was threatening to sue, claiming I'd schemed to seize the neighborhood. I smirked. She'd finally bared her fangs, but she was rattled. That night, she went door to door, spinning tales that I'd turn our quiet suburb into a truck stop. Some bought it, especially after she flashed forged papers hinting I was tied to a sketchy developer. My cameras caught her at midnight, sneaking onto my lot to photograph my car's plates. Next day, she filed a lawsuit, alleging I'd violated HOA rules by buying properties via my company, even pushing for an emergency order to block my voting rights. That's when my prep paid off. My lawyer unleashed our arsenal. 5 years of HOA meeting records, videos of Linda excusing her pals' violations while hammering others, checks proving she'd funneled HOA cash into her patio remodel, emails where she gloated about keeping undesirables out. The judge's jaw tightened as we rolled out evidence. 3 a.m. Lawn measuring footage, photos of my son's car, notes she'd left on neighbors' doors. Her attorney squirmed when we showed she'd doctored records to hide her cronies' unpaid dues. Then 3 ex-board members testified. Linda had coerced them into unfair rules, targeted families she disliked, and bragged about funding Hawaii trips with fines. The room stilled as we played her social media clips mocking seniors struggling with fees, poolside in Maui, captioned, "Thanks, violators, for this vacui." She claimed it was her job, but a recording of her berating Mrs. Davis over a bird feeder 2 inches too low broke her. She leapt up, jabbing a finger at me. "He's ruining our perfect community. Without strict rules, who knows what riffraff will move in? He'll let people park anywhere." The judge shut it down, dismissing her suit and ordering an HOA audit. As we left, neighbors texted me. Linda had mass emailed her resignation, blaming corporate greed. She peeled out, still typing. She wasn't done, but I had proof of her abuses and the power to fix things. The final hearing dawned with news vans at my house. Linda's attempt to shame me backfired, giving me a megaphone. I stepped out, tie straight, papers in hand. "Morning, folks. I'm Tom Carter, and I've got some eye-opening HOA financials." I showed spreadsheets of suspicious fees funneled to Linda's allies, higher fines for single moms than her golf crew. A reporter gaped at footage of Linda measuring my lawn at 3 a.m., while her own yard broke every rule. In court, her smug grin faded as we exposed her purple mailbox, overgrown shrubs, and son's 4 street-parked cars. Her secret Facebook group sealed it. She'd posted, "Let's see how long the Carters last with these fees. Maybe they'll sell to someone better." A pool party clip nailed her. "I invent violations to control who lives here." The judge's gavel crashed. Linda was ousted and ordered to repay $147,892 in unfair fees. Her expression was priceless. With my 67% stake, I built a new board, 5 diverse residents, including Mrs. Lopez, fined for her tamales smell, and Mr. Patel, whose wild garden Linda hated. We greenlit driveway basketball, veggie gardens, and 3-car parking if it fit. 3 weeks later, Linda's moving truck rolled up. Her farewell letter claimed she'd found a classier place, but her new HOA ticketed her car as she left. My son parked his Toyota beside my truck and Emily's sedan that night. We voted in a sign. "Welcome to Carter Cove, good neighbors, great living." A TV producer called, pitching a documentary on our HOA turnaround. As kids played and neighbors mingled, I grinned, imagining Linda watching from her new 1-car garage hell. Property values jumped 15% in a month. People love respect, not fear. Some of Linda's old crew apologized, admitting they'd feared her wrath. Our HOA now funds playgrounds, pool repairs, and help for seniors, not Linda's photo ops. A text from her new neighborhood watch group asked for tips on ousting their own tyrant. I leaned back, smiling. Sometimes, the best payback isn't revenge, it's empowering others to fight back.